welcome to episode 2 of Wrestling in 97 with myself and James. How you doing, man? You good?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Obviously, first episode was the Royal Rumble, first pay-per-view by either promotion of the year. And we thought we would quickly fill it up or follow it up with Souled Out, which was WCW's first contribution of the year.
Yeah, which I think happens about a week after Royal Rumble. Yeah, 25th of January, 97.
I mean, obviously, we'll get into more detail about it when we talk about it, but Souled Out was very, as I was saying to you before to hit record, it was obviously like very much an experimental, an idea, which I say we'll go into deeper, I think, as we discuss the matches and stuff, because it becomes very obvious what the plan would have been. But I did watch the Nitro before, and I know you're watching them anyway, so I know you've watched it. It was actually you that made me want to watch it, because as you sort of said, it starts off with Savage holding Nitro hostage, which
that was quite cool. Yeah, that must be one of the first times that whole hostage thing has been done, because I know they did it in WWE a few times, but Austin did it in '98, I think. But that was, yeah, it felt sort of quite real the way they did it. And they had like the wrestlers come out like, come on, we just want to do our match, and then it ended up just getting into fights with them, which was cool.
Cabo was the first one to come out, and he was like, come on. No. And some dude called Max, I think he was fighting. I don't really
know. Yeah, I didn't really know who he was, but yeah, massive guy, but he gets belted as well.
That's it. Then Alex Wright comes out. I think a few other people come out as well, don't they?
Yeah, because I thought Souled Out was, because I haven't seen any of the WCW pay-per-views from this year, because I was always a WWF man, so it's quite, but I sort of know what's going to happen just because I know what's happened in history, and I know that Macho Man's going to join NWO at some point, so I thought him coming back and they were going to do a swerve at Souled Out that got him joining NWO. I thought maybe Sting would get involved, and then he would like turn his back on Sting and join NWO in the title match, but no, none of that happened. Maybe it's still to come, but instead a terrible finish.
I think it does happen at some point, but I can't remember when. But yeah, obviously that's the whole build-up is, and that's how the hostage thing ends, is with Sting getting in the ring, giving him the bat. Yeah. And his back on him, and then just being like, yeah, you know what you're going to do. So as far as Nitros go, obviously it was the go home show before the pay-per-view. You always kind of expect them to use every second possible to plug the pay-per-view.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was a good episode. They did what I don't know, I think we Sold Out being what it was. I don't know if it falls into your normal pay-per-view category, is it like the blueprint of what you should do?
So yeah, I felt like they weren't bigging it up as they would do, because they had Clash of the Champions, which isn't on the network. So I was like, oh, do we need to watch that as well? But it's not even on the network. But that was a week before the NWO one, because they were talking about that on the Nitro. Clash of the Champions as well. Whether that I guess that must have happened the night before or it was something. I was getting a bit confused by that. So maybe if anyone watches this can fill us in what was going on there. But I think they had those two pay-per-views very near to each other, and they were talking more about that than they were Souled Out, I felt. And they're talking a little bit about Souled Out, but there wasn't, because they didn't build up to the ladder match, did they? Like, you don't see that. You don't really see them building up to Hogan and Giant. Like, Hogan just does his usual sort of come out and like the promo and taunts everyone at the end. It was mainly about the Macho Man and Sting, who weren't really a part of this pay-per-view. I'm trying to think what it was on. Yeah, Friday night I watched Nitro. I can't even remember how it finished now. Yeah, it was Hogan doing something and closed off the show.
Yeah. Some gargle one. I can't remember myself exactly. I think as soon as the gargle kicks in, I kind of go on autopilot, which if I remember correctly, a lot of Nitro in '97. But I do remember the Kevin Sullivan, Chris Benoit sort of backstage brawl match.
Oh yeah, and they're not part of the Souled Out either, and that was a huge part of this Nitro. And again, because they had that match previously, didn't they? Like in '96, that one where they go in the bathroom and stuff. And at one point, I thought they were showing like a rerun of that match, and I was like, why are they showing this? Because like it's so similar. And then no, it wasn't. It was just a new one. So that was a bit random. They were just did that again. But I guess Sullivan was a booker, and he really wanted to book his divorce.
Yeah, he wanted to get his hands on the other guy. So,
yeah, that was a bit.
Got a Flair promo, bigging up the Four Horsemen, sort of because obviously this is when they're kind of teasing, or Deborah's in Double J. You know.
So again, it's very like WCW focused, and it doesn't really. The NWO Sold Out. It's just about the NWO really. So yeah, it was almost it didn't really build up the pay-per-view at all to answer that question.
Yeah, it's like I don't know whether they were overcompensating because they knew they had an NWO heavy pay-per-view at the weekend. They thought they might make the Nitro WCW heavy, which just threw everything off scale for me. Because the way that the Sold Out was presented, you had NWO guys versus WCW guys. It should have been a 50-50 split to make you care about these matches. You know, so if you're Team NWO, you're rooting for them, but if you're Team WCW, you know, that was another whole thing about the pay-per-view is on paper you've created a pay-per-view around a heel faction.
Well, so I think the intention was it was like NWO is meant to be a different company. It's not a faction, is it? And they're meant to be making a rival company that's competing with WCW. And they talk about that a lot on commentary, how it's an up and coming, growing company, and it's not really anything to do with WCW. It's a separate company, so it's not really a faction. And they're trying to present it differently, but then but they're also a heel faction, so it doesn't really work.
Everything they do is heelish. You know, everything about them is heel mannerisms.
But then also they're not. Everyone loves them as well, which sort of just makes the WCW heels really look just really crap, in my opinion. Like it really you can see why they might have been getting a bit pissed off with like the cool heels at the time, especially guys like Four Horsemen and stuff like that, who traditionally were very heelish, and now they sort of got these NWO new guys there that are just taking that heel role, but doing it very differently and getting cheered as well. So it's not like they can even pivot and be baby faces. They're sort of the old boring heels in WCW. Maybe not Horsemen so much, but there's a lot like Dungeon of Doom are just like they're just there. And it's weird. They're sort of heels and baby faces, but neither at the same time. They're kind of like tweeners that no one really cares about.
That's it. I think that's the whole problem with this pay-per-view is, like I said, unfortunately, it was very much, I mean, the numbers, I kind of looked into the numbers afterwards, and I think it was WCW's worst selling pay-per-view of the year. I think
5,120, so that's hardly any. The one Royal Rumble was 60,000 we're talking about.
Yeah, the lowest after that was like 237 or something. I think Slamboree was in the 300s.
Right.
It was. So it's definitely way down. And I think, again, that was the heel company or heel faction. Because the people, somebody summarized it up, and I'll kind of try and paraphrase it as best as I can, is it's not always the cool fans who buy the pay-per-views, it's the parents for the kids, or the old traditionalists. And unfortunately, the NWO, for the old traditionalists who had been around since like the Crockett days, they were the WWE guys who had come down and just made their guys look shit. So that got their back up. So they weren't buying the pay-per-view kind of thing.
But I mean, NWO obviously got the ratings up, and so more people were watching, so it did work. But I just think they didn't promote it enough, and it was just a bit weird what they were trying to do. It didn't make sense really. I think it was like an idea they had that didn't really work.
But I'll say if it had worked, because this will justify the expansion of the NWO, because obviously everybody kicks off or takes the mick about how many members they had. Obviously, the plan was to have this was before Thunder, so you only had Nitro. They wanted an NWO TV program coincide with Nitro kind of thing, and that would just be full of NWO members, and you would have had face and heel people within the NWO going against each other.
Yeah, Thunder was meant to be an NWO show, or it may have been Nitro and WCW would have gone to Thunder. I'm not sure which way around, but yeah, that was the intention, but it never happened, did it?
Yeah, so they were left with all these members in the NWO, and it was like, okay, now like what do we do? Yeah, we filled the roster up, but now we have no TV show, to help with. So that's obviously then we've got the Wolf Pack, the B Team, the B Squad. But to the pay-per-view, I think obviously you said you were quite excited to watch this one prior to having watched it. Before we go into any great depth, did you feel deflated after watching it, or did you?
I only finished watching it about an hour ago actually, and I was deflated. I was like, that was very average or less than average. Like some things were quite cool to see, but overall I was like, this is just a really average pay-per-view.
Yep. It makes the Rumble look good.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I was thinking like, oh yeah, I feel like the Rumble is actually way better than we were saying last week.
Yep. So starts off with Chris Jericho.
One thing I did think was cool was the opening though, where they come down in the black and white on the back of the lorries and stuff.
I was going to ask this because it went off like 10 minutes.
Maybe it was too long, but I just quite liked it because it was very different.
I love Binman, but what's like super cool about riding?
That's a good point. Yeah. Why are they on bin trucks? Or were they just trucks, or were they bin boats?
They were bin trucks. They were garbage.
They are bin trucks. Okay, that's a bit weird. But I quite like the black and white start and the fact they're theming it. I soon got over that, but on the intro I quite liked it. We'll get on to the other stuff in a minute. Starting with Jericho and Chono and Jericho's entrance, and that I was like, what are they doing? Why are they not giving them music? And I've actually read a few online reviews of it before our call. People quite like that. They thought, oh, it's really different and unique. I just thought it was crap. Like you just really like the baby faces just look terrible, just coming out to nothing, and then you got silly little the thing or the sort of speaker is saying stuff about them. It's just weird. And I imagine the live crowd is like, imagine like there's like casual fans in that crowd who have not been to a wrestling show before. They were like, what is this? This is really weird.
Exactly. And like, it's not going to mean anything when, Chono goes over or whoever goes over.
Yeah.
W guy, you've belittled them that much. The victory doesn't mean anything.
Well, the reason for a wrestling entrance is to like big up that wrestler and make them look like a star. And then they didn't look like stars. And like, I guess like storyline wise, they're trying to make them not look like stars, so NWO is better. But then it just doesn't, from a business point of view, it just doesn't make sense. But even like if you were living in their gimmick world, from a business point of view, it still doesn't make sense because they've made their opponents look terrible. So therefore, their product looks worse. So they've made their NWO product, and also every NWO guy has the same music. So it's just a pay-per-view with the same music. There's no other music. It's mental.
They all started. I love that music, but after like the third or fourth, it's just like, I was like, oh my god, again, same thing again.
What did you think of our two announcers?
Oh, DiBiase and
Bischoff.
It's just they didn't do the job, in the right manner.
Yeah, like they're both like NWO heels. There's no one supporting the baby faces. There's no one doing play-by-play. They're just sort of taking the piss the whole time. Like the whole thing feels like it's taking the piss, which is kind of NWO stick. But when they're meant to be running a show, it doesn't work.
Yeah, that's it. There's taking the piss, and then there's like, if you are meant to be a business, be a business kind of thing. If you're meant to be another promotion, you must be the promotion kind of thing. You just happens to have some really good names.
Yeah, I know. So I thought that was ridiculous.
I thought the Jericho Chono match, it kind of summed up the whole pay-per-view for me in a way, in the sense of Jericho looked like he was busting his balls. He was trying to get stuff going, like just kind of going through the paces. I mean, I think at one point Jericho screaming at him to run the ropes.
Oh, right, I missed that. But yeah, I thought it was a messy match. That was my main notes from it. Like it was, yeah, it was just messy and felt a bit convoluted. It didn't, yeah, it wasn't Jericho's best match, certainly.
I don't think I don't think it's on him all that much. I think Chono is just obviously, getting a payday kind of thing. 'Cause he just
Yeah,
didn't look, bothered. And unfortunately, that's kind of what became associated with a lot of the NWO guys over the years. They're just cashing their checks. Not so much right now. I mean, we'll get to Nash and Hall when we get to their match. But some of the guys put an absolute shifting in, and others just look so out of place. It was unreal.
yeah, I didn't think Chono was great in this. And they sort of built, bigging up the whole he's turned his back on New Japan. I'd be interested to know what they did the other side of that. Like, were New Japan mentioning it, and was it part of their TV as well? But
I'm sure it was briefly. I'm sure it did get kind of, which is weird because obviously it's kind of very similar to like the Bullet Club kind of thing. So it would have been very early days New Japan Bullet Club kind of thing. After even down to the two sweeps.
yeah.
So I don't think it went on for too long. I think it might have been a couple of episodes or a couple of mentions of it in New
He
Japan.
even like rips up the t-shirt and stuff, doesn't he? And like, yeah, hits Sonny Ono, which again, he's like a heel manager. And like, what happens when he beat up a heel man? When a heel beats up a heel, like that other heel just becomes a bit like no one cares about them then.
Yeah, that's it. You're running the risk of making, like you sort of say, your mainstay heels very redundant.
It's like the Nasty Boys. They got turned down by the NWO and beaten up a few months ago, and now they're with WCW and sort meant to be baby faces. But it's like, well, you kind of wanted to turn your back on WCW, and they turned you down. So you'll just come back with your tail between your legs, and like you're nothing. Like it just completely like deflates them.
That's it. So, I mean, well, yeah, obviously those nice little table spot in this match. They got to
Oh
eventually.
yeah,
It looked kind of very forced. I think Jericho was pretty much trying to guide it and
yeah.
get to that point, and then match done. Obviously Chono, Team NWA get the first. That's the thing as well, because there was like counting victories. You want to big up your position. If they want it to mean something. If they start saying like, "Oh, that's 1-0 to Team NWO," then they obviously wanted it to mean something when a WCW guy got the pinfall.
Yeah.
We'll get to in match 3. But that felt like a nothing moment, and that should have been like, oh shit, WCW got a pinfall kind of thing.
Yeah, it wasn't like WCW versus NWO. They didn't score it or anything. And the fact Nick Patrick was a ref for every match was just it was the same story every match.
Yeah,
Like, wasn't it, pretty much?
yeah. I think the actual full title of the pay-per-view was NWO Nick Patrick Sold Out. So yeah,
He put in a shift to his credit, but still, it's like, yeah, it was a big crap.
He do earned his pay that day, but again, it's too much of the same thing. They're forcing it, and it becomes very old very quickly, and that became very old very quickly in one pay-per-view. It was just like, nah, you're totally sort of milking it. So
Yeah.
after this one, it was a makeshift match next because it was meant to be Conan.
Oh, really? What do we give that first match?
First match, I've learnt my lesson now. I'm going 2 out of 10 for that match.
Oh, whoa, 2, you go that low? Yeah,
So,
'cause I just thought like, oh, it's average match, and I gave it 5 out of 10, but maybe it should be lower. I'll give it 4 out of 10 because I thought 5 was a bit generous. Because I thought there were some good wrestling in it, and I like Jericho, but that was yeah.
it's just I don't think the crowd were into it. I just don't think I thought
Cool.
it felt very very flat. And there are some better matches later on that will get 5s and 6s. But if I start this one any higher, they're going to be 7s or 8s.
Yeah, true.
I'm learning my lesson from the Rumble. Going the other way.
2. Yeah, I think 2's too low for it, but I think my 5 is probably too generous. I'll change mine to a 4.
Actually, the next one will be right. I'll give this one a 3 based on what's coming next. So yeah, Jericho Chono 3. Next up, obviously we had Hugh Morris. Or it's going by a different name. I didn't catch the name that they announced him as.
Oh no, I didn't. I just thought it was Hugh Morris. Yeah, I missed that as well. And I thought he looked like Big Dick Dudley when he came out.
Yeah, coming out in the tie-dye and stuff. It was just very like.
Yeah, it was odd, wasn't it?
He wasn't wearing that on Nitro. And I don't think he wore it on the Nitro the night after kind of thing. So it was totally like a one shot. Here comes, unless it was a foresight into his huge erection days when WCW, and he was trying to be a big dick. It's like went from big dick to a major erection or whatever he's called in that faction later on in WCW. I know it's something really bad. So yeah, you'll probably find there's some sort of weird unknown truth. And he was against. My mind's just gone totally blank here. Who was
Big Bubba?
Big Bubba, yes, Big Boss Man, Bubba Taylor.
So it was meant to be Big Bubba and Conan, was it?
Yes, it was meant to be Bubba versus Conan.
So that whole Big Bubba and Conan thing, should it not have been Conan that turned their back on them and joined NWO? He feels like such a good fit for NWO, Conan, and in this era, and instead they went with Big Bubba. Like, it's stupid.
Yeah, he does eventually, because obviously he's part of the major part of the Wolfpack with Nash.
I thought he does eventually, but I'm like, why didn't they just do it here? Like, why did Big Bubba go in instead of Conan? Because he's not really part of because he's meant to be in the Jimmy Hart's group, Dungeon of Doom, isn't he? Well, and Kevin Sullivan, and like he's not a good fit for that at all. But NWO, he just seemed like a great fit.
But I think obviously wasn't Bubba before he joined NWO part of the Doom.
Yeah, they're both in Dungeon. That's why they're feuding, because they're both in Dungeon of Doom, and I think Big Bubba's a better fit for Dungeon of Doom than Conan is. I'm not saying he sort of fits in there. It's like all like old WWF guys that haven't got any other place to go. That's kind of what Dungeon of Doom is.
All I can think of is his good mates with Hogan, and Conan wasn't at the time. So Hogan wanted to surround himself with people that would have his back if needed, kind of thing. Hence IRS or Michael Tonga being in there as well, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's weird he's in there. I guess he's like mates with $1 Million Man as well. Like that's I like they make a reference to that, but it's weird.
Yeah, but so Hugh Morris versus the Big Boss Man for the casual fan. Just two big guys kind of going through the paces.
I didn't realize until about halfway in it was a Mexican death match. They didn't really mention it until halfway in. I was like, they're using a lot of weapons, and I was like, okay, we talked about this. Maybe it's 97. That's what they do. And then they said, oh, it's a Mexican death match. And then I'm like, why is it a Mexican death match? You've answered my question, because Conan was meant to be in it. That would have made more sense. But
ironically, he couldn't get out of Mexico, so that's why he missed the show.
That's funny. Yeah, that is funny. But I thought some bits were all right. Like some of the chain shots from Bossman actually looked good. Although did you see him sucking the chain? That was really odd. He started licking the chain, which was a bit much. Hugh Morris's moonsault is always quite impressive. The one on the outside he did wasn't quite as impressive. The one off the stairs. So I thought the match was pretty bad, but saved by, depending on how you view it, but saved by quite a creative finish. I was like, he ran him over with a motorbike. That's crazy.
But again, you kind of like, are they the good guys who you're meant to be rooting for this new promotion, or they're the bad guys? I mean, he pretty much kind of nearly tried to kill a dude with a motorbike.
Yes, I thought that was quite, because I don't think I've seen that finish before. So that any points? I thought when I was watching it, I was like, I give this a 2, but I want to give it an extra 2 for that finish.
For the attempted manslaughter.
Maybe the match gets a 1 and the finish gets a 2. So it's 3 in total.
Like I say, it's always cool to see the moonsault. I'm an old school. Bossman was always my go-to guy on the WWE arcade game, so I've always got a bit of a soft spot for.
I always like Bossman. I don't like this version of Bossman. It's just I prefer it when he goes back to even later Bossman in WWF, when he goes back sort of in the Attitude Era. I prefer that one to this one.
That's still Bossman, but he's just like private security now, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's back from the prison life. He's private security.
I just always think he looks a mess, like with his black vest, and like it doesn't. he just looks like he's not. It just looks like he can't really be asked, just the way he's dressed and stuff. And he's sort of fat, but he's got like little skinny arms, like in comparison to the other wrestlers. And it just, yeah, I think I don't think it's a very good presentation of a Big Boss Man at all.
So yeah, so first one getting a 3. This one gets a 2.5 for me. I just don't think there's anything overly 1 or 2 moments.
First one 4, so I'll give this one a 3. But I'm being more generous than you this week, it seems.
So the third match, this was the match where I think we were meant to give a damn. So we had Jeff Jarrett,
yeah,
versus
Wall Street.
Yes, Mr. Michael Otunga. Obviously Bray Wyatt's dad, again for the casual fans, in case you didn't know. Obviously the whole kind of story behind this one was it focused in on Michaels and Deborah in the audience. Deborah,
yeah, I like they had a story to it.
Yeah, at least, to be fair, at least it's kind of tied in. You know, there's a bit of continuity on this one. You know, you kind of had like the whole Deborah wants Jarrett in the Horseman. You know, she's trying to sort of like, she seems more upset by him being put into an abdominal stretch than the dude getting knocked over by a motorbike in the previous match.
Yeah.
So yeah, and again though, you kind of get the impression you was meant to give a damn when Jarrett got the 1, 2, 3, but the audience was just flat.
Because it's just, they're giving off such confusing signals, aren't they? Like, firstly, Jarrett and Mondo are heels in WCW, so no one really cares about them. And also they're sort of feuding with each other. And the only reason he wins is because of the interference. And it's not only heel interference, but it's like reluctant heel interference because he's sort of cuckolded by his wife who fancies Jarrett as well. Like the whole thing just makes you feel uncomfortable, and like you certainly don't want to cheer for anyone. And Wall Street's in it, who's kind of boring, so no one really cares that he's been beaten. Like I think he's a solid wrestler, old Wall Street, but he's not the most exciting, and certainly doesn't fit the coolness of NWO either.
Definitely.
I suppose Ted DiBiase doesn't really, but he's kind of like the money guy, so it kind of makes sense he's in there. But no one ever talks about DiBiase being an NWO, even though he's like one of the originals.
Yeah. I don't think because he never really competed in the ring. I don't think. Because I know there was this whole hoo-ha when Six was announced, and they try and say that his name is Six because he was the 6th member. Whereas like now DiBiase, he's technically the 7th member.
Yeah. Oh, right. Yeah, because before that, Giant was the first one, wasn't he? After Hogan, so there was DiBiase. So that was so there was 5 then. Who was after Giant? Who was in between Giant and 6 then? I thought 6 came after Giant. I think there is someone else.
There is, so I can't remember.
Obviously not very. Oh, what about Virgil or Vince? Is so Vince is here. Yeah, Vince is here at this point. He's there before 6. But again, like, is he a proper member? He's like,
you kind of got that debate of whether at least he stepped foot in the ring and got a bit of action. I think that kind of gave him a like, he's member, whatever. So yeah, I think DiBiase there's like it's a very grey area there. With I always thought 6 was just called 6 though because of obviously the 1, 2, 3 kids. Yeah, those things, then you get 6. That was always my understanding.
Yeah, I think it's sort of got double meaning, I suppose, which I suppose is quite clever. Oh, one of my notes on here, I was like, I actually fell asleep watching this, and then I was like, what am I going to give this match? I didn't really watch it because I fell asleep, and I was like, surely that should tell me how how good this match is. And I rewound it and watched it again, but yeah, I didn't miss much. But what did we give the? So we've given, I've given a 3 or 2. It probably was better than the first match with Chono and Jericho, or I don't know actually, maybe another 3. I would give this.
Yeah, I'll put it on par. I don't think it was as good as, but at least they did a bit of continuity.
At least story.
Yeah. So I'll give it a 3. I'll put it on par with the first match purely for that continuity reason. At least there was something.
Actually, in my original notes, I preferred the first match, so I'll probably give it a 3.5. This one.
It was cool to see, obviously, Mongo intimidate the referee as well into counting a 3 count.
Oh, that was quite, yeah, at least it, like, yeah, showed that you can get the baby faces to win.
That's what they should have done in every match afterwards. It's like, well, learn from your mistakes. You know, you've got a 3 counter here. Just get Michaels out every match and fucking have him threaten to bash the referee.
The WCW guys didn't do anything other than the ref, which we'll get into later. But like Arn Hansen and co just sat there the whole time, aren't they? And yeah, Harlem Heat and Sherry, they don't get involved. All Dungeon of Doom, they don't get involved, despite their man getting run over by a motorbike.
Yeah. That's it. If you think anything's going to provoke a reaction, you'd be like, that's too far. Right. Well, we're 3 matches in, and we haven't actually addressed what I would say was the major elephant in the room about the pay-per-view as well. I'm only going to touch on it for a few seconds because I don't want to give it any more time.
I want to talk about it because it's hilarious, but so bad.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, if you've seen the pay-per-view, you know what we're talking about. We don't need to go into any more detail about it. But apparently Bischoff was trying to be smart and clever and be totally different to everybody else, and kind of like was trying to stick 2 fingers up and be like, but it just totally didn't work. So we'll go to the next match and we won't ever mention it again.
We've got to talk about it. You're talking about the like beauty pageant thing, right? Yeah, the NWO girl. I felt like this is one of the things we've got to talk about the most because it's so terrible. I think that's what people want to hear.
Right, okay, that's it. But yeah, apparently Bischoff has sort of said that he didn't want it because obviously the first thing you notice is that most of the women look like, you know, bored housewives in the mid-40s kind of thing.
It was a weird choice of woman to use, yeah. Like they weren't the most attractive, and I didn't really get it if like it was meant to be because they were sort of treating it like it was serious and they were treating it like they were real like beauty queens. And you could say, oh well, what about the beauty within? But then you see them being interviewed and they're terrible. Like they're just like, yeah, it's the personality that counts, but nope, they don't have a personality either. It was really weird. And like I don't know if it was meant to be like the NWO sort of taking the piss or something, but because they are taking the piss because they in the final bit near the end of it they have like stupid little like hobbies and jobs, like one's like a grain counter, or like it says like, oh, he likes men in flannel shirts and stuff. It's really it's obviously taking the piss, but I don't know what the point of it is.
No, that's it. I mean, like I say, Bischoff has gone on record to sort of say he wanted to take the Michael out of, I think, WWE at the time, like having Sonny. I think obviously Sable was around, you know. But then again, you know, like you look at WCW, and I'm pretty certain the Nitro girls were a thing at this point.
Yeah,
so they're not innocent in using hot women, you know, to try and get ratings or to try and sort of, you know, sexualize, you know, the opposite sex. So it didn't make any sense.
So we're also watching the WWF product at the same time, and I didn't pick up on that. So that's like it didn't work, definitely. Like I didn't know it was a pop at WWF. I thought it was just NWO's like whole stick of taking the piss out of everything, but it just made them look stupid. Like towards like Bischoff like snogs one of them at the end.
Yeah, it's the winner. That's the prize. You know, the prize. The winner gets a kiss from Eazy-E, and it's just like, wow, no.
Yeah, like what is going on there? But
the amount of time as well. I mean, if it just been like a 10-minute segment, like halfway through the pay-per-view or something, fair enough, we can fast forward it. But it wasn't. It was like 5-10 minutes after every match. You know, it took up a massive chunk of the pay-per-view in regards. And you just look like some of the talent that wasn't on that show that could have been on the show.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous.
It was bizarre, and it was bizarre. They were just sat on motorbikes around the ring and stuff. Like they're kind of getting in the way. They looked so uncomfortable as well. I felt a bit bad for them because they obviously, didn't really know what they're meant to be doing.
It wasn't. I think we could put that down to a massive swing and a miss from WCW creative at that point. I think they had no idea what they wanted and missed the mark hugely. Next up, though, was it the tag match next?
Buff Bagwell and Scotty Riggs next.
Sorry, I kind of tried to forget about this one.
So I really like this one.
Did you? I thought,
Yeah, I quite like. Yeah, I've been watching the old WCW. I quite liked American Males as well. Their tag matches, some of them are pretty good. I thought the wrestling was good. I've even put here best match so far. So I mean,
the bar's down here, though. To be
yeah, I
fair.
mean the bar is low. I thought best match so far. The crowd are into it because it's got a story behind it. I hate the camera shots. We haven't talked about them yet. The weird little NWO like camera shots. And yeah, I thought it was. I quite liked it. I'm surprised, but I actually, when I read some reviews, other people hated it as well, and you seem to not like it. So I'm maybe alone in that one.
Riggs, I always thought was quality. I enjoyed them as a tag team. I did remember watching. I used to watch WCW back in the day, at like 2 o'clock in the morning on ITV or something in my bedroom, like all the old school stuff. I remember that. I remember them fondly. But I just think, I don't know, when Buff went heel, never really clicked for me. Riggs was never appreciated or bigged up enough. I thought he could have been used a lot better
Mm.
within the company as a result of this. But yeah, to me, they were both guys that were allowed to shine for like 7 minutes or so on TV every few weeks, and then you give them a 15-minute match on a pay-per-view, and it was a bit like, maybe if they'd cut it to like a 10-minute match, I might have enjoyed it a bit more. I just think it was a bit too long for them.
Yeah, maybe it was quite long. It's one of the first times he did the blockbuster. I thought he actually did the blockbuster quite well because nowadays when anyone does it, they like barely like hold their head, do they? They just sort of but he really like holds on to it, and it looks quite like realistic the way he does it.
It was, yeah, it was the first time that Bagwell hit that kind of thing. So that's one of the facts that I kind of looked up, and it's like, oh yeah, the first ever time Bagwell hit this.
Mm.
And in all fairness, it's as you said, yeah. As much as I'm saying it should have been a 10-minute match, 15 was too long. It's still the best match of the night so far.
Yeah. So what have we haven't gone over 4 yet, have we? And I've been generous, so I'll probably give it a 5 this one.
5. Well, I'm going to give it a 4.
Right. Okay.
Still, it's up there. It's getting there. We're getting to the but again, because I know what's coming up later, so I don't want to give. There's a massive gap between this and the next few matches, or the next 2 matches for me, and then obviously you got the main event. But yeah, God, you mentioned the NWO camera, because obviously this was as well. This was very much like, I don't know, like what Trips was trying to do with NXT. When he launched NXT, he was trying to use different camera angles. He was trying to experiment with stuff, and that's what WCW wanted to do with this. Was like the blueprint for a new show, for what they wanted to do. They wanted it to look and feel different to WCW. Hence the arena, the layout, everything looked totally different from anything you'd ever seen on WCW. And yeah, they were trying out new things. So you had, like, you had the camera angles, certain shots. Some of them.
Have you ever been to like a theme park where you're waiting in the queue and they have like the characters come on like the TV screens, like, oh, get ready for a scare and that sort of stuff? I felt this whole time, especially at the beginning where you had like Hogan, Hall, and Nash come on the screens, it was kind of reminding me of that. Like it had like that sort of American theme park feel to it, which so in a way could be good. Like, but it just made me laugh. And especially because they had the audio, speaker going on the whole time as well, like during the match and stuff.
Fun fact, well, not a fun fact, but a fact about the 3 faces on screen. Obviously, back it was in '97. Technology wasn't quite as savvy as it is now. Basically, the guy in charge of production had 3 separate videotapes that was having to start and stop in like
Really?
the speech as it should have been. So, regardless of how it looks, I'll give the man his dues. He put a bit of effort into it.
Yeah, I sort of thought that was quite cool. I didn't like the speaker in the middle of matches, like going loser and all that stuff. I thought that was a bit, pointless.
It's what we said before about belittling your opponent is not called for. It just sort of besmirches. You get the W, but what's the W mean if you're beating somebody who's a nobody?
Mm.
So next up though is for me, I got sort of pumped Just on the entrances for this match, it is the tag match next, if I'm
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, that's right.
Obviously, Hall and Nash look like absolute stars. You said Hall was made to look like an absolute, looked like
on
a
the
star.
Nitro before, he looks like a star against Booker T, and he looks like a star here as well. Every time I see him in this sort of era, I'm like, man, he could have been world champion. Like, he's just he looks like such a star. He's great, and he wrestles great as well. Which I'm a big Scott Hall fan and Razor Ramon fan.
One of the best punchers in the business, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, really good. Like, I love his moveset as well. I sort of know his moveset so well, and he just sort of sticks to that really, but he just does it so well and just works through it slowly and methodically through his match. And yeah, I think he's a great wrestler, Scott Hall.
Regardless of people's thoughts or opinions of Nash, you can't deny the guy looked money. When he came out, he just had that connection. The fans were drawn to him. He had that aura, that kind of charisma about him. You put him and Hall together.
I think the reason I did like the garbage thing at the beginning had a lot to do with Hall as well. Not Hall. Hall and Nash and Six. Those three I thought were good. Just when they were filming on the back and like the stuff they were saying, I just those three and Hogan I just make NWO, but everyone else is just hanging on really.
Yeah.
Even Bischoff I think's hanging on. Like he's sort of all right in NWO, but it doesn't quite work for me. The only like genuinely sort of like cool ones that I really like are Hogan, Hall, Nash, and Six, and then they're meant to be heels, so maybe they've done wrong in doing that. But the genuine like charismatic ones, those four, and everyone else is just hanging on.
Deserves a mention as well, and we'll find out why after this match. But obviously, you had the Outsiders. And you had them against probably one of my favourite tag teams of all time in the Steiners. I just think Steiners were just, and this was obviously you got Rick Steiner just being Rick Steiner, and you got Scotty Steiner before he became a genetic freak or Big Papa. And you just don't fuck with these. Like, you just don't mess with these two guys. They are legitimately just like, if anybody's going to be able to throw around Nash and Hall, it's the Steiners.
And he does. Like, it's mental how Scott Steiner throws around Nash, like doing big suplexes on him. It's really impressive.
But Nash sells for him as well. Nash, that's what the point I was going to make earlier when I sort of said what kind of became synonymous with the NWO was like kind of phoning it in, cashing in your checks. But tonight in this match, both Hall and Nash put an absolute shift in, and they looked like they wanted to be there, and they looked like they wanted to make this match successful.
Yeah, I think they probably get on with the Steiners, and Steiners probably get on with them. And I imagine also Steiners come with a reputation, so they probably came with their working boots that night and were like, yeah, we can't sort of get away with phoning it in this one.
Definitely. But yeah, I was just thoroughly impressed with Nash's selling ability. Scott Hall. Let's say Scott Steiner was just throwing people around left, right, and centre. But then obviously the inevitable happens. We get the Gaga finish.
I like that finish because you've had Nick Patrick the whole night, and then Randy comes in and counts the pin. I thought that was quite good. Obviously, I feel like they're going to give the titles back on Nitro the next night, but it was a great finish. I thought, good tag match.
The fans were into it as well. This was like the first time really, you've seen the fans off the seats. They popped. Obviously, Steiner's new tag team champs. Bischoff's bitching and moaning on commentary about how it's an outrage, it's an injustice, blah blah blah. It just this felt to me like a pay-per-view match. It was the first one of the night. Really, that felt like a legit pay-per-view match.
Yeah, definitely second best match on the card. I really enjoyed it, and I think the Outsiders always, because I've seen a few of their pay-per-view matches now since I've been watching the Night 6 ones, and not all of them are amazing wrestling matches, but they always come across as like stars, and I'm excited to watch them.
Yeah,
and actually their matches haven't been that bad, even though I think on the last one they were against Powers of Pain, or not Power, what are they call in WCW? Barbarian and Haku, whatever their name is. But that's really good, and I think people like shit on that match a little bit.
Yeah, I loved that team in WCW, Haku and Barbarian. I thought that was legitimately, again, another team you would not mess with. And
Faces of Fear. There we go. Yeah, I couldn't remember their name, but Faces of Fear. Yeah, I think they're great. Faces of Fear. I feel like they're a bit underrated because they're a really good team. There's yeah, they look like they kill their opponents.
Exactly, and obviously Haku's got that reputation of he's legitimately one of those guys that you would never mess with, which I think probably is why Hall and Nash also turned up whenever they were in the ring with them as well, because there's definitely that respect.
But then also Harlem Heat as well. They're the same with them, and I guess it's all like it's big teams. Like considering if you think of the tag division in WWF at this time, which is sort of dominated by Smoking Guns, Godwins, Body Donners, New Rockers, that sort of era. Like it's way better in WCW tag team division at the moment. Like you've got some really good, like legendary tag teams. All four of those teams are legendary. Some people might not think Faces of Fear are, but I do.
Yeah, and I would second that. I would say, watch a handful of their matches and come back at me and sort of say, tell me why they're not. If you don't think they are, fine, but tell me why.
Yeah.
Well, I'll point out.
I think it was a shame they were in Dungeon of Doom. I think that really just drives their stock down.
It was a shit faction, wasn't it? Really, it was just
it was crap. Fat anyone in there just it immediately drives their stock down, and it's a shame because especially with Face of Fear, they were pretty good. I didn't say it's weird with Jimmy Hart, like because he's now sort of a babyface manager in that earlier match when he was against with Big Bubba, and when he's doing the interference on Big Bubba and getting sort of cheers. It's very odd because he's meant to be a heel manager usually. But there's all sort of weird things like that. But anyway, back to the tag match, which was a good match.
This is like I say, it's a massive gap between the best match so far and this one. This is clearly like I'll give this a 7.
I gave it a 7. Yeah, I think it's worthy 7. Definitely, I really liked it.
I wanted a big gap between the best so far and then this match kind of thing. I wanted there to be a good clear window between, just to point out, like, okay, yeah, if you'd have had more matches like this in the next one,
it
would have been an awesome pay-per-view. But and the one that we're talking about is there's another thing as well. Ladder matches were very sparse in WCW at this time. They were more of a WWE thing. So
they had a ladder match in WCW at this point, not one that I can remember.
Not off the top of my head, I didn't want to say they haven't, but they might have had one or two at a push that I don't know of. But to my knowledge, I can't think of one prior to this. Any fans out there want to sort of let us know in the comments, please do. But yeah, Six versus Eddie in a ladder match for the US title, which Six had stolen prior to the show, hence him coming out with the belt.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, really good match. I felt it. I was looking forward to this one because you had mentioned it as well beforehand, and so I was like, okay, this is gonna be good. I did feel it was because we've seen so many like good ladder matches, and they wouldn't have seen them at this point. I was slightly underwhelmed. I thought it was a really good match, but I thought it was going to be better. And it was quite short as well, and that might be because they did quite a lot of non-ladder wrestling at the beginning, so they didn't actually do that much stuff with the ladder. But it was good, and there was some. I still think it's a highly rated match. There was some like the things like Six doing the drop kick on the top of the ladder. I thought that was crazy. I don't think I've ever seen that before. They're both on like one of the top rungs and he just does a drop kick, and I was like, that was crazy.
It's
nice. Sort of Six kick.
At the time, obviously in hindsight, we've seen bigger, we've seen sort of better, which is why I've got to be careful what I rate it, because if I rate this one too high, then it means there's a handful of 10 out of 10 ladder matches happening kind of thing. But at the time, for like January '97, especially if you're just an out-and-out WCW fan and you've not seen any of the, like the Shawn versus Razor ones or
but they make reference to that a lot, don't they? They love making reference to WWF stuff and saying how Razor Ramon have been training up Six for the match and stuff.
Yeah, it's kind of acknowledging it, but also kind of like, it's better. But yeah, if you're a devout WCW fan, I think this would have rocked your world because it is something new, something you've not really seen before.
Yeah.
Both guys, I mean, Eddie on his worst days better than most people, and Six is always has been, one of the best workers for me in the ring. Again, I don't want to say he's underappreciated because I think he's like a two-time, obviously Hall of Famer, but fans never really acknowledge his skill set or just kind of how good he was.
Because he's always part of groups and stuff, isn't he? I think. And when he did have the only time he sort of had singles runs, it's not been that great. Like post 1-2-3 Kid, I'm thinking about when he goes to WWF. He is always part of the faction because he's always kind of tied to DX, really, isn't he? Even like when DX is disbanded, he's still old X-Pac. Like his name is DX almost.
Still like got Road Dogg or China kind of close by. There's still that connection.
Yeah. I quite like seeing the transition from 1-2-3 Kid to X-Pac because bear in mind I've not really seen this stuff.
Yeah.
So I thought it was interesting how he looks like X-Pac and is like, because he's got his hair like permed or whatever he does with it now, and he's sort of like sunglasses and he's got that sort of like cool look rather than how 1-2-3 Kid was just a kid, but he's still got lightning on his tights and stuff like 1-2-3 Kid. I was like, oh, okay, it's like he's combined.
This is kind of like the evolution, from 1-2-3 to 6 to X-Pac kind of thing. When he comes back, he's got the beard. Yeah, he's rocking the bandana. He's very much.
I was trying to work out, like, he does look very different to 1-2-3 Kid, but this is not that long ago. Like a year ago, he was feuding with Razor Ramon as 1-2-3 Kid, and he looked very different. And I think it's because he does his hair different. He's got a beard as well or something, doesn't he? Yeah, that's why he just looks older and cooler. Whereas 1-2-3 Kid he looks like a kid, really.
Yeah, and a very strange look. No offense to the guy, but if you shave the beard off, he's got a very weird looking face. So
he's
sort
of quite oblong face, isn't he?
So, but yeah, this was, and so for me, I was going to give it an 8, but after what we've just talked about,
I gave it an 8. Yeah, actually.
I was going to say 7.5, but I think it was a clear one above the tag match. So, and at the time, I think the match was the ending was quite creative, where he's grabbing the belt and he whacks him in the face with it, but then Eddie drops it, and Eddie's got to get down like really quick to get the belt. Like, I got it. It's all right. Panic over.
One thing I did really like about it, actually, compared to modern day ladder matches, was it seemed more realistic the way that they were going for it, and they weren't just going from spot to spot. Like it looked like they were genuinely going for the belt and things. And some bits were a bit messier, but it looked more genuine. So I did appreciate that side of it, even though I said at the beginning that I feel it's been overshadowed by more recent ladder matches.
Yeah,
but I would give it. I think, especially for the time as well, I'd give it an 8, and certainly the best. And I think it was one above the tag match as well.
Definitely. And that takes us to the main event.
Not an 8. Oh, I know you don't like talking about it, but yeah, I just got a few notes on the on the Nitro Girls again, because this is where they have the final. Yeah. They have the throne is a toilet.
I'd fast forwarded by this point. I didn't even see that. But
the throne is a toilet. Ted DiBiase is genuinely speechless at one point, obviously thinking like, what should I say? Like he must be thinking like, this is so shit. I was offended watching it, and I don't get offended much. I was like, this is so bad. Like, I just feel like this is, I'm offended for like everyone involved as well. It was, awful. Oh, but the guy that hosts it, I didn't know. Do you know who that is? Jeff Katz. I didn't know because I looked it up, but I didn't.
I know it's got something to do with the studio, and they wanted to give him a test run, and this was his test run.
Yes, he's only 18 here, so he was hired in '96. He looks way older than 18, doesn't he? Yeah. But he was he's like a big Hollywood producer. He produced Snakes on a Plane and loads of and Freddie and Jason and stuff. So he's like, after wrestling, he went to do producing, and he was quite successful at it. Oh, he said he's worked on those productions, so maybe he's not like the main one, but he was involved with them. And I'm just like, yeah, he's involved with Deadpool, X-Men, Wolverine. Like, he's done loads of stuff. Like, he's a big Hollywood guy now. You wouldn't think it watching this, would you?
Well, I suppose it goes to show you know we've all got to start somewhere. You start from the bottom and you work your way up.
Yeah, this was very much the start of his career, and this, yeah, was a start. Like, you can't get much lower than this. It was awful.
But I think he knew people who knew people, kind of thing. So, like I sort of said, I think it was the studio's idea to get him involved, and they wanted to give him a test run, you know, with a microphone. If
Yeah.
do the NWO spin-off, and then I think he would have been like a backstage announcer, or
yeah, he was known to them. He travelled around with them when he was a teenager. So this was just him giving him. It's quite a big spot, really, because he's on loads of the pay-per-view.
Yeah, it's more than he should have been. Like I said, this whole.
I mean, none of them should have been on it. Anyway,
no.
Hogan versus Giant. We won't ever talk about it again. Oh, we missed a match.
Which one? Hang on.
Oh, I forgot. Yeah, for some reason, I'm just looking at my notes. DDP versus Scott Norton. We didn't miss that much. It was a bit of an average match.
Yeah. Obviously, kind of key. It was the end of this match was the more important thing for the, you know, the story of Page. Obviously, the previous night on Nitro.
It was a week before Nitro, I think. He turns on Scott, but it's just. I didn't think it was necessary. It wasn't necessary because they did the exact same thing. It just made the NWO look stupid because they've already been fooled. So, like, why are they doing it again?
Yeah.
They shouldn't have done it again, that finish. But with the B team for NWO, it just didn't work for me at all.
Either way, have him do it to the B team and be like, okay, right, you didn't accept the invite off of the B team, but the big boys are asking you now, do you want to join?
But no, because then it would have taken away from that. Like, the way they did it was great. It was perfect. And that's what made DDP hitting Scott Hall with that, with the cutter. It was great. And this was just, I think they just wanted to really hammer it home that DDP, maybe they just thought, oh, it worked so well, we'll do it again tonight on this pay-per-view. Because they hadn't done it on a pay-per-view. But it was, yeah.
The fans ate it up, though.
They did still eat it up. I thought it was silly they did. And Scott Norton no-sells a diamond cutter as well, which he takes it, he runs into the crowd, goes back to the ring, and Scott Norton's just stood up. I was like, all right, well done, thanks, mate.
yeah, like one of the most prominent moves at the time, you know, one of the most devastating, you know, he can finish.
Yeah.
That's the thing with obviously the thing with DDP was, you know, he could be getting his ass kicked for 10, 15 minutes, but if he hits you with the cutter, that's it. You're gone.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. Why did they need to do this finish again? Why didn't they just have DDP go over clean? And that could have been like one of the few like WCW wins. And Nick Patrick had to do the count because he didn't have any other choice. That would have been better. That would have been a better finish for me personally.
Yeah,
I didn't think it was a great match. DDP has quite like a unique moveset. He tries like quite a few cool things, but I think probably about 4 this match as well. It wasn't anything great.
Yeah, sort of on par with. I'm trying to think what I gave a 4 to now. Can't remember. I'll go back and watch it. But yeah, it's middle ground. I said I wanted like at least a 3-point gap between the 4 and the 7 for the tag match.
Yeah.
This falls within that 4 bracket. I sort of said just for the finish, for the repetitiveness of it. I do appreciate anytime you get a bit of continuity, though. I pop a little bit for the continuity because it's like, okay, at least they're trying. You know, right or wrong. Say it was wrong in this case, but yeah, you know, at least they tried, I suppose. And when we're watching this pay-per-view, that's like the biggest compliment I can really give is, at least they tried.
Yeah.
So yeah, no offense to DDP and Scotty Norton, but I kind of forgot about that.
Scott Norton does phone it in a little bit, I've found in this sort of era. I guess he's getting on a bit here. I don't know too much about his Japan stuff, but I think that's where he really did a lot of good stuff.
Yeah,
and here he seems like he's phoning it in a lot. He's just such a big guy. It's quite hard for wrestlers to do stuff with him as well because he's so strong too. Wasn't he like an arm wrestling champion or something? That was
Something like that, yeah. So unless he's willing to help you out, it's going to be a hard shift to try and get him through the paces. But yeah, main event: Paul White, aka the Big Show, the Giant, versus old Terry, Mr. Hulk Hogan. Again, you pretty much, I think, any fan at this point knew he wasn't dropping the belt at any times and any point soon. To anyone barring one person, I think that's the problem at this time when you start building up that one main challenger. Anybody else, you kind of, unless it's two very good workers who can pull you in and suspend your disbelief. And no offense to these two guys, they aren't those two guys that would make me even for a second think, hang on a minute, I might be wrong here.
Yeah.
You always knew.
Well, he's had I thought they sort of built a Roddy Piper has just beaten him. I suppose he's not going to get the belt. I suppose Macho Man you didn't think was going to beat him either. So maybe you're right. I assume you're speaking about Sting, who they're building up at the moment. Obviously, I know that they've got the Lex Luger thing. I'm interested to see how that happens, where Lex Luger gets the belt. I don't know when that happens, but I know it happens at some point in '97. So I'm intrigued with that.
Yeah, I'm sure
No one thought Giant was going to win the belt here, and it's not a very good match. He does do a top rope elbow though, which was a bit crazy from Giant.
Yeah, I think I remember when I was watching WCW back ages ago. I'm sure I saw him hit a moonsault once. I'm sure I've seen the Big Show. Whether I've just imagined it or dreamt it, or it's just become the stuff of urban legend. I'm sure I can remember sort of sometime in '96.
Yeah,
moonsault, and it's
wow.
just. Yeah, obviously seeing him do an elbow drop still is impressive, especially as I think you and me are obviously more accustomed to the Big Show than we were to the Giant.
Yes, I thought, it was a very punch kick style match. It was very messy in points. Like, there's a point where Hogan it looks like he's doing a small package, but he never does small packages. So I knew it was just a fuck up. But Bischoff's trying to cover it on commentary, saying, "Oh, he's trying to pin him," and then he just picks him up and slams him. And Giant does it. It just looks really messy. But I thought the whole match was I thought the finish was awful.
Yeah, it was just, again, it was NWO sort of gaga, the interference, the bad guys have to, bully down the good guy. And again, that's what NWO were. They were bullies, even though they were a cool sort of promotion, stroke faction, they were bullies, they were heels. They would always be like a group of hyenas, that would quite quickly jump on, any fallen prey. So, and that's majority. I think 87% of their matches ended, very similarly.
Yeah, it gets a bit boring after a while. And I thought something was going to happen with interference, like from WCW guys in this match, but it doesn't. And it's just there isn't even a pinfall or anything. It's just the end of the match, and it's Yeah,
the pay-per-view closes with like freaking Hulk Hogan in the camera shouting NWO for life or whatever. But what's the point having the WCW guys in the audience if they're not going to come in and sort of, just make a save at the end? It could have gone with the cameras going down with those guys in the ring, just the closing moment.
But then kayfabe, like, why would they help the Giant? He's been in the NWO for the last 6 months.
True. But my enemy is my friend. Logic. We've seen it in wrestling so many times. You know what I mean? I don't know. It's kind of like depending on your film knowledge from back in the day, it's kind of like that 48 hours buddy, prisoner cop team up momentum kind of thing. My enemy is my friend. So I don't like you, but I help you.
What do we give this match then? 2.
Wasn't as bad as the earlier ones because it did feel like a main event. It did have.
I gave it 3 originally, so maybe I'll stick with my 3. I don't.
Oh.
So you think it was better than? Do you think it was better than all those early ones? So you think it was better than the American Males Explode for Bagwell and.
I do. I don't know. I wanted to say if it was better. It might have been on par with. I don't know. At this point, I think I was probably still hyped after the previous 2 matches.
Yeah.
It was the main event. It was for the title. Even though I knew what was going to happen, it's still kind of, I was still, I don't know, riding the high from the last two matches. I think I probably should have stepped away and come back and watched it.
No, you're right. It is the main event. So if you enjoyed watching it, rate it higher. I quite liked, the American males match. No one else did.
I'd say I'd give it a 4. And I do want there to be a massive gap. I still want that 3-point gap between the good matches and the other matches. So it gets a 4 for me.
Yeah.
Two very good matches, and every other match was below 5 or was 4 or below.
Yeah. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I thought all the other ones were just very average. And yeah, it felt like an episode of Nitro, really. But not only it was an episode of Nitro, but it was like a bad episode of Nitro where all the finishes are the same because you've got Nick Patrick as a ref. So that's the only story you're telling. And all the entrances are the same with no music and NWO music. So it was, there was definitely, they do a Sold Out in 98 as well. I wonder if what they changed for that. That'll be interesting.
I have watched it, but I can't remember. I don't know if it's at that point if the Wolfpack's kicking about. So I don't know if it's more the NWO versus NWO, black and white versus Wolfpack or something. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. But I think obviously Goldberg's kicking around by that point as well.
Yeah. They say, or Hogan says a few times, who's next, which made me laugh because I was like, oh, Goldberg's coming soon.
So it does.
Complete coincidence, but it just made me laugh knowing what's going to happen.
That's the thing. I mean, I know obviously sort of say WCW was strong till sort of like mid 98, early 99. But I think this shows that the whole NWO thing, which was credited for WCW being so strong and on top for so long, was probably a false bravado in the sense of I think the NWO was wearing very thin by this point. And then Goldberg turned up and he was the one who carried it for another year.
Yeah. Yeah, you might be right. I just think I think the NWO is good, but all the random extras they've got in it was good as a faction. It doesn't, I think we've hit the nail on the head with that. It was good as a faction, but it wasn't good as making it a rival company, which is what they were trying to do. If they kept it as a faction, it would have been a lot better.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, unfortunately, I think when you kind of understand, I think obviously they saw dollar signs. In fact, it blew up so quickly. It was becoming part of pop culture outside of people outside of wrestling knew what the NWO was. They knew the t-shirts.
Well, Hogan's a real big deal as well. Still, isn't like they had the Dallas Cowboys in the main event. Actually, that I popped for that. I don't know huge amount about American football. I do quite like it, but I know in this era, Dallas Cowboys were a big deal. They had they may have been ex-football players, but they had Super Bowl rings, and I was like, that's cool that they've come down with them. And when it was Hogan, 3 Dallas Cowboy players, and then Vince. I was like, someone really shouldn't be in this crew. Like they're all like massive stars, and Vince is there.
Not like the others, because I don't know if Rodman's been on yet, or if that's in '97 when
he's not been on yet.
Yeah, that must be '97 then when he teams with Hogan at some point.
Yeah.
And obviously at the time Rodman was like the bad boy of the NBA. He was a massive household name. So yeah, they saw dollar signs. Can't fault them for trying. They just obviously didn't succeed very well, and unfortunately diluted the product down and hurt the actual what it was at its core.
Yeah, but yeah, I'm looking forward to the rise of DDP as well. That seems to be really getting over. So and I love the whole Sting thing, and the Sting thing's getting over too. So and Lex Luger's getting over. So you do have 3 big like non NWO guys who are doing something, which is cool. I feel 4 Horsemen are kind of getting lost in the shuffle because they were a really strong heel faction, and now we've got a bigger heel faction.
They do come back at some point. Like I said, I did watch all of WCW a few years back, and yeah, Luger's huge. I still remember. Obviously, you've got that to look forward to, but just his reaction, the crowds.
Yeah.
It's mental just how over he was with the WCW crowd when you think back to how hard he was trying to get pushed in '93, '94.
Yeah.
It's WWF kind of thing. WCW fans love him, and he always gets like a massive ovation kind of thing. So yeah, it's weird, but it's kind of cool. She's like, oh, okay, because obviously as a WWF guy, my memory of Lex was the Lex Express and all that kind of shit. So it's like it really blew my mind when he was like treated like a massive star in WCW.
Yeah.
And obviously DDP, we've got a good 2 pay-per-view matches with Macho Man to look forward to. That's the whole story of DDP, is DDP versus Macho Man, really.
Yeah, I knew that. I know that like DDP sort of accredits Macho Man to really like taking him up to the next level.
Yeah. So there's a lot of good stuff to look forward to. So this was the first taste of WCW for this year. And I can happily say it does get a shitload better.
Right, that's good. I think we've kept it shorter today. It's about an hour. I was a bit wary of that time.
Yes, I would like to put the intro onto the video this week and stuff, but apologies if you obviously watched episode 1. It literally just start with us 2 talking, just due to the length of and everything we had to talk about with the Rumble. But it will be back to being edited and looking all pretty and stuff on this one. So ironically, the last episode was probably more like Sold Out than this one will be, because that was a bit of a dirty episode last time. It looked a bit gritty. So I'll make this one look all pretty.
Yeah.
So, obviously, next up, this was January. For February, obviously, I think 97 was when the In Your Houses were pretty much becoming a monthly thing. So we've
got a good one next for WWF. It's Final 4, which is a really good match.
Yeah. Again, though, if memory serves me right, undercard, meh.
I can't remember the undercard at all. So maybe I heard. I think it was probably on one of Conrad's podcasts, how he always says that in this era WCW was winning, and they had a brilliant undercard but terrible main events, but WWF had great main events but terrible undercards, and I think there is some truth to that. Definitely. And obviously we'll touch on that. I think that'll become more and more obvious with other WCW pay-per-views, when you get your likes of your Eddies, your Rays, Jericho's, Malenko's, Kidman's, Raven, all those guys actually getting time to shine on the mid-card. And then, on WWF, it was very, very sparse, unfortunately, at the time. But, yeah, it's things for future shows and things to enjoy and to digest. Yeah.
I'm going to end the episode. I've just got to ask as a follow-up. Are you holding tag team titles? Were you successful?
Oh yeah, we do. We are the new tag team champions, JC Thunder and Wing Commander Nash. We were named by a fan as well, our new tag team name. So we're called the Thunder Brothers, which is very random, but that's our tag team name. But the promoter said to us, like, "Oh, Nash, I want you to name the team, but don't tell JC until after the match in front of the crowd." And he asked the kid in the audience what he wants us to be called, and the kid said Thunder Brothers. I was like, right, okay.
That'll do. Awesome, man. Well, congratulations. You said it's your first time back in the ring this year, was it?
Second, yeah. So not very much. They're the only ones I've been doing, actually. I think next year I might start to get more bookings again. We'll see. Like it feels very I feel very naked without a gimmick. So obviously I used to do the Russian thing. And even when I was JC Thunder before, I was always a heel. And now, like, I'm whenever I was a babyface, I was Boris, actually. Strangely, I was a Russian babyface. But that kind of worked. But at the moment, I feel like a very generic babyface. And I feel I want to improve on.
I think there'll be a heel turn eventually, because Nash is just one of those guys that eventually you're going to want to punch in the face.
We'll see, yeah.
No offense, Nash. Nash is lovely. We love him to pieces. But as a wrestler, I can imagine as a partner, it's very much be like, yeah, he's gonna punch him at some point. You're gonna get fed up with the shenanigans.
Yeah,
you're just gonna have enough. So either that, or you're gonna be like another Al Snow and Steve Blackman, where one is just very straight faced. And
I think it does sort of that. I guess that's my role in the team, so it does kind of work. So that's all right.
Just don't come out wearing cheese on your head at any point.
Yeah.
Like head cheese Mark II. That's an old throwback for you. But yeah, dude, anything you want to plug on socials? Yeah, obviously the True Grit website is now up and running.
Yeah, www.truegritwrestling.com. Got that up. We got tickets for our York show, which is selling really well actually, which is good. They seem to be, yeah. So I was worried, like our new ticketing system. I was like, oh, I hope fans understand how to use this because I've not done it before. And then suddenly start getting loads of emails like you've sold this ticket, and I was like, oh, wow, that's good.
Nice, cool. I'll post a link in the description as well. So if you're interested, I would strongly recommend going. Have a day out in York and then go watch some wrestling afterwards. It'll be banging.
Yeah, York's always good fun to go to, and the York shows are always really good as well. It'll be our first one back there for since beginning of COVID, when I was meant to do it's even called the same name, Invasion. So I kept the same name from the last York show, and that was meant to be in March 2020. A lot's changed since then, but yeah, we're still going back to York with True Grit.
Nice. So thank you obviously very much for joining me on this one today. We will be back next month to talk obviously WWE Final Four. We say it was it called? I would say it's called Final Four. Yep. Obviously main of
WCW, we've got Super Brawl.
The Super Bowl, and then yes.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's about March, April time where you get the Sting Hogan collide, or it might even be October. I can't remember.
That's not until Starrcade at the end of the year.
October, isn't it? A time-ish, yeah.
I think that's December Starrcade.
Really?
October's Halloween Havoc, yeah.
Of course it is, yeah. Halloween Havoc. Okay, that's way ahead yet, but yeah, that's an awesome pay-per-view. So I look forward to that one. So yeah, two potentially very good shows to talk about next, and we will see you back very soon. Thank you for watching. Hit like, hit subscribe. So you go follow us on Twitter at WTLS420. Follow True Grit Wrestling as well on Twitter. You'll find them on my page quite a lot, and follow us on Facebook. And be sure to say hi. Let us know what you think to the episodes as well, and anything else you want us to talk about in future episodes. So James, thank you so much.
Thank you, Nick. Yeah, always good. Always a pleasure. I enjoy talking 97 wrestling.
what's not to love? It's just that's the thing. Is again the same as the last episode. I'm finishing the episode all hyped up. I'm just like, yes, this is what wrestling should do to you as a fan. You should be able to sit there and talk to somebody about it.
Yeah, definitely.
Smile on your face. So, dude, thank you very much, and I will see you soon.
See you soon. Cheers.